everyone. Assalamu alaikum. Do we have only two?
She is coming.
Okay, we will start. Thanks all for being here until this time. I know all stomachs are empty now, and also we have to leave early because I am asked by the organizers to have only a few questions. I will start by introducing our guests here. I have on my left Arun. He translate or bring his experience from India state to about using open source in industry. And also here I have Kiarash, I think? Yes, who talked about a cloud provider using open source. You can ask using the website, which already known to you, fosk.om/2019/ask. So please, if you have any questions to the guests, please send it over. Please mention the name for your guest. So I will start here by a question. Is FOSS secure to use for smart home applications, and what is the level of security it provides? Who FOSS is in? So you are lucky, you come in time. Okay, I repeat the question. Is FOSS secure for you to use for smart home applications, and what level of security it provides?
Yeah, I mean, there is no yes or no answer to this question, in my view, because, like, of course, we can look at the code, so it could be more secure than proprietary solutions, but the question is always, do people look at the code? Somebody actually does have to look at the code to ensure the code is safe. And like FOSS in general, there are many different applications, just like there are many different proprietary applications. So yeah, it's difficult to answer this in detail, but I also can say the configuration is important. So for example, if you have an application that is in the network, how do you configure your software? That's very important, and I think that's also where you have probably something to add here, as you are also an expert in this area.
No, I think for home automation, whom can you trust? If it is not for free software, you are trusting somebody else blindly, and I mean a proprietary software provider. And how secure is it? I think free software is the only way to have a secure and privacy-friendly home automation.
Thank you very much. Here I have a question myself to you, Kiarash. Business may start with open source or closed source at the beginning, but sometimes, according to some reasons, they change from this to that or vice versa. Do you have any clue about what ratio of those who change from closed to open source, and what are the main reasons of doing so?
Quite interesting question. Yes, we move from open source to closed source and vice versa, definitely. But I think one of the main reason to do that change is the business itself. The business today needs one thing, tomorrow needs something else. The customer asks for one thing, tomorrow asks for something else. But in general, I would take a look at it from another point of view, which is the security. Whenever you're talking about open source, and I mentioned coding, it means that you have to open literally the code and understand what the code is doing. If it's closed code, you don't know what the code is doing. We were doing a pen test, as a matter of fact, for a closed environment, closed source, and we found out that 4 packets are being sent out every minute. All right? 4 packets every minute. for a hacker, you need actually 2 packets to hack you. So 4 packets are sent from the closed source to the outside world. For that specific reason, we decided to go to open source, specifically for security, because we know what's going on, we know what it is doing, and we know that if it's going on, we can modify it not for the data to go out and to have a data breach.
Thank you very much. Welcome, Gilles. Yes, here I have a question for Arun. What is the first step towards starting cloud computing using open source? Is some from one of the guys, please.
I think I'm not an expert on the cloud
But
computing.
you started this business in your state, Indian state, and you have done these kind of things.
Yeah.
If I am right, according to your talk.
Yeah, so most of the work which we do are on the computers. So
Sorry, that should be to the
yeah.
this guy
Yes.
on my right.
Yes.
Sorry for that. Yes, please.
Again, to be able to start cloud computing, first of all, you have to have a knowledge of a system integration. All right, that's the first thing that you got to know. So you have to understand what is hardware, you have to understand what is the network, what is the CPU, what is the RAM, what is the entire ecosystem. That's one thing. From the business side, you have to understand the components that you would need. I'm talking about the billing system. I'm talking about the reporting system, a CRM, all those components. You got to have a very good understanding on that. Now, from there, you have to put your hypothesis down. What is more important for you to have the availability or let's say security? Can you start with a little bit of a lower security, then go forward, and then change it at a later stage? Whenever you put all these hypotheses together and you have solutions in front of every single one, then you have to take a look at how to integrate all these. If you go to open source, definitely you need to have coding knowledge and expertise. If you go by closed source, then you have to have those closed source service providers or sellers to be able to do the integration for you, because you don't have one solution that fits the entirety of your business. Your ERP is something, yes, but your ERP is not a cloud service brokerage. Your cloud service brokerage is not a CRM, it's not a virtualization platform, it's not a software-defined network. So you have to have a lot of system integration knowledge within your team, and if you go to open source, then you got to have the coding as well.
Thank you very much. The question is for you, Gilles. I think it's for you. What are some examples, or give some examples of FOSS which are used for big data and data analytics? Are you aware of that, of any?
So I'm not usually working with projects themselves. I'm more focusing on corporate strategy. So I really wouldn't know specifically. The only thing I can say is that if you look at the various projects that have been published by both Facebook and Google in their various open source initiatives, you will find some stuff there. But again, I wouldn't be able to point to specifics.
Any of guys on the left? Yes, please.
So the question is about big data, yeah?
Yes. Any specific software that can be used for big data and data analytics?
Well, there are a lot of solutions out there, and the question is, what is the goal of the software? So basically, what question do you want to ask? And so we had a few questions, and we wanted to analyze sentiments, so kind of feelings. And a few years ago, and we didn't find so good data sets. So what we did is we started a project called LogLug, and the idea was to collect data sets from the web in a structured way. So for example, we harvested tweets, I think 2 billion tweets, yeah, that helped us then to have large data sets and to ask questions like for example, how many people post like different smileys or have different sentiments, and to analyze how is the global mood, for example. things like that. So check out this project, Logluck. And so do I understand right that we should also answer the questions that are here behind us?
Because there's one for you right there.
Yeah, because there's one for me right there, yeah?
Which one is that one?
What's the difference
Yes,
between...
go ahead, please, go ahead.
Yeah,
Yes.
between Susie and Siri. So who asked this question? Yeah. So yeah, that's a very good question. So Susie is basically a completely different solution. It's the universal super intelligence, Susie, and Siri is a product of Apple that is closed source. If you're interested in some details, I happened to talk to some developers like who were involved in like earlier versions of Siri, which is supposed to also come, like the voice recognition, supposed to come from a company called Nuance. And even earlier there were projects actually from Germany, and there was Siemens involved and so on. So that's a completely different story, and it's closed source, so you can't change anything in that solution. You can't just train another language and add it to Siri. But with Susie AI, you can do that. So if you want to add Omani and Arabic dialects, so you can do that with Susie AI, and it's completely open and free, so you can use it for your own purposes.
Thank you very much. And here I have a question which I need to know really the answer. How long it will take to make a good base of open source infrastructure for Oman? Do we have one at the moment? People from ITA, I think they are doing a good job, but...
Can you say the question again?
Yes. How long it take to make a good base for open source infrastructure for the country, Oman? How long will it take?
How long?
Yes. Where are we at the moment?
It really depends on how much money you want to put into it and how many resources you can pull together. It can be a big bang approach where you say, this is how we do it. You have 6 months. I understand that's how Emirates built their airline, and it works. Or you can do it very progressively and very organically by building programs in place, putting teams together. For example, France took a whole year to put together a governmental open source policy. If you were, one of the questions here, what's the best argument to use to convince the government to adopt free and friendly policies? Well, France did that, and there are many good reasons. And how long will it take really depends on how convincing and strong the reasons are. If the Omani government finds a good reason that makes a lot of sense for building an open source policy and putting in place policies and procedures for open source in the government, then it will go fast. And so maybe to answer the top question, the people in the French government told me once that it's interesting, when a government builds an open source project, 2 things happen. First, the knowledge of the project, because it's open source, belongs to the citizen. France being a republic means the thing of the public. So the government belongs to the public, and what the government produces should belong to the public. So it goes very well with that story. But in general, when a government produces something that serves the state, if it's not linked to defense or other very sensitive subject, it could be open sourced very well, and then everybody in the state can help make it better, and that includes the citizen. So that's a strong thing, a strong idea, and that's what happens when you do open source. The other thing that I was told by the people in the French Ministry of Interior is that when they build an open source project, even though there is a cost for building an open source project, you have to pay developers, integrators, the money you're paying goes to people in the country if you're using local workforce, and it doesn't go in terms of licenses to some company in the USA. So the money you pay as a government, you inject it into the local economy. And what the local economy does with that money is, well, you're paying salaries, so that those people with their salary are renting a house or buying food, which generates tax revenues, income tax, and they may be, with the knowledge they gain, creating their own company, which then becomes a money-generating operation. So in general, funding an open source project results in the creation of knowledge and wealth. So governments, and in particular, as I said, the French Ministry of Interior, sees funding an open source project as a money-generating operation. It's a positive budget. And that is a very strong value proposition for a government. When you go onto the open source story, you generate value.
Thank you very much. Yes, please.
Just adding to that, how to convince the government to free software. So, in our work in Kerala, we find that the economic argument sells fast, but sticks much less. And we have seen it in many cases in the school education, etc. So the software industry has changed, and they are also bringing zero-cost services to the government. But so the economic argument works first, but not in the long run. At the local capability building sticks when the authorities are having a longer-term perspective. But when, in many of our projects, they were from ground up. So the people within the organization took the initiative. There, I think the emphasis was more on the community aspect and the collaboration and the social capital around that. The school teachers told the government that we prefer free software because it is socially more valuable. And the power utility company, now nobody can bring a proprietary system because the workers there has this feeling that free software is theirs, and they are a community, and they have to ensure that only free software solutions are used within the organization. So that creates a very long-term, sustainable social capital defending free software. So I would say we will need a mix of all these strategies. Each has its own ups and downs, and we have to use it creatively.
I'm going to add one thing, because I mentioned that government might not necessarily share things which are confidential. Let me tell you a story that plays into the sovereignty aspect of open source. The French government was looking for an ultra-secure operating system platform. And in terms of security, it's called a multi-level secure operating system, which lets you have parts of the operating system operating at top secret, parts at confidential, parts at public, and you can't bring down information from top secret to public and things like that. Very complex. And there are commercial offerings for this. Trusted Solaris, I used to work for Sun, is a great platform. Well, what the French government did is they said, oh, we do not trust a non-French product for this. So what we're going to do is we're going to develop our own platform. And they started doing this, and it works, and it's Linux-based. And then they realized that the only way to bring trust to this platform is to make it open source. So they actually recently, last year, they open sourced, and I don't remember the name of the platform, so send me an email through the FOSS team and I will get it for you if you want. But they open sourced their ultra-secure operating system, and it's available now on GitHub for everybody to contribute to, right? And so they're saying, we trust it, but have a look at the source code so that you trust it, and you can also use it in your state. And they're very open to having contributions from all over the world to something that they're using internally for ultra-secure computing platforms. So it's really important, open source, because it lets a country have full control on what they're trusting most in terms of their IT infrastructure.
Thank you very much. Here, one last question. And I think it needs more clarification about how the cloud computing, providers use the open source, or what is the idea of cloud providers? How cloud service protect everyone's privacy when the fact data are stored in the cloud? Can you clarify? I think there is a doubt about open source and cloud providers.
Okay. One of my colleagues, basically, Dr. Amir Abbas, I think he's very well known within the university. We were sitting in, I think, a cloud computing conference, such as this one, and the question was taken, basically, was posed by one of the people. Maybe probably that was one of the students. So his answer was quite straight. How much money do you spend for your IT infrastructure? How much of that is spent on the security for your data? All right? So imagine any IT infrastructure, small company, big company, corporate, etc. What is the part that is being spent on security? Now, take a look at the cloud computing itself. The investment in the IT is the entire company, basically, all right? Question people, question IT infrastructure, question servers and services, etc. Literally about, I would say, 30% of the money that we have to spend in IT is about security. So literally we have penetration tests. In normal companies, they're talking about once every 3 months, once every 6 months. We have one every week, all right? And the security that we take a look at, it's not just network security. It's operating system security. It's provisioning system security. We take a look at the security from all different aspects. All right? So literally the amount of money, the amount of time, the amount of everything that we do, a third of it is based on security, which is not the case in any of the companies. All right, we have a company that is being, let's say, automotives, or they are a ship company, or they are doing petrochemicals. Definitely not a third of their budget will go towards security. All right, so we actually, in our premises, we take a look at the security as a very first layer. I can tell you, with all due respect to all countries across the world, we were attacked. We are getting, let's say, about 13,000 attacks a day, so 5 per second today. That amount reached about 23 or 24,000 attacks in one day. It increased. And we found out literally that these attacks were coming from China. So literally we blocked all IPs from China. A seventh of the world population cannot see our data center. So what? Security for us is first. It's not the service, it's the security. Then it becomes a service. And it's all open source, by the way, as I mentioned. So it is important for us to take a look at the security, then look at the service. I'm not sure if it's the case in the IT setup that is not based on a cloud. All right? This is our perspective, and that's why we are in Oman. We are local. So in case something happened with your cloud, you know where to go. You know, I put our address in my presentation. We are in Al-Ghobra. We are not somewhere in San Francisco. We are not somewhere in Ireland that no one knows about. We are in Al-Ghobra, so in case something happened, literally you can come to us, and legally you can actually go against us. It's not the case if you go with Google. It's not the case if you go with Microsoft. It's not the case if you go with closed source environment, because the closed source are not in Oman. So whatever happens, any security breach that you have, you won't be able to access it right away, or you have to spend a lot of time, legal, etc., to get your legal rights to be used.
Thank you very much, Kiarash. And also, I want to thank all our guests, Gilles and Arun from the left, and Mario. Thank you very much, and thanks for you all, and hope to see you next year, inshallah.